Hi, this is Atya here. Welcome to PhDpreneur, where we discuss PhD, mindset, and personal finance. Today, I'm going to discuss an important topic, which is what are the differences between a part-time PhD and a full-time PhD. We will go into the details of everything, different parameters, how things are different, what are the fees, how fees are different, and basically everything that you need to know about the difference between part-time and full-time. And hopefully this video will help you gain clarity and help you decide what is a good fit for you. Before that, I wish to clear out distinctions between a part-time PhD, a full-time PhD, and a distance education PhD. And let me tell you the difference between all three. A full-time PhD is when the person is resident or a person pays regular visits to the lab. He or she is not working anywhere else, solely focused mainly on PhD. A part-time PhD is usually enrolled for when you are working somewhere to get promotion or when your job requirement is PhD. The criteria for each are different, and that we will discuss later in the video. Now, distance PhD, or you can say online PhD, is when you don't have to visit the campus or thing at all, and you do it only through online modes, through assignments or through interactions or anything. A word of caution about distance PhDs is that recently UGC has rolled out a circular invalidating or banning distance PhDs. So if you are doing distance PhD and getting into a regular job, if your job is a place which is affiliated to UGC, then your distance PhD degree may not be valid. You might be able to get a job in the private sector. Without further ado, let's begin with today's video. Okay. Now the first difference is number of objectives. Usually this is what I have seen. Part-time PhDs have less objective as compared to full-time, but I have to say that this depends on supervisor. If there are more objectives, then usually part-time PhDs take even longer. Anyways, they take longer only, but part-time PhDs even take longer. Objectives are more. The duration of a part-time PhD is more. This depends on your work and how fast you finish. That applies for part-time as well as full-time PhD. But specifically, since part-time PhDs have work, they are doing regular jobs as well as PhDs as well as their families. So it is usually seen that the duration is more. The purpose of part-time PhD, the purpose is usually promotion. If your job requires PhD or thing, for full-time it is usually academics, or if you are starting your career, if you have time, then you can go for full-time. Fees for part-time is more. That is what I have seen in private universities. For full-time it is usually less. For part-time it is more. You are expected to have a regular job. They structure the fees accordingly, but this you will have to check. The focus over here is for part-time you have to balance with work, with your family, or then the focus becomes less. On the contrary, you can give undivided attention in case of a full-time PhD. With respect to intensity, when I say intensity, it is similar to the previous point. The way you work, the intensity that you have, that could be less with respect to mental health and physical health, because you are juggling too much of load, and for full time you have more of intensity. Does it require a work experience to enroll for part-time PhD? Yes. And also you will require an NOC, no objection certificate, from the employer you are working. So it is not possible that your employer won't know that you are doing a PhD. In full-time it is there is no such requirement. Usually for full-time the marks or qualification of entrance exams, if applicable for that institute, then it is required. As far as mental health goes, many of the times what happens is, because there is less interaction with people around, you don't get to know exactly what is happening in the field as far as part-time curriculum is concerned. So you may feel like you don't know anything. Imposter syndrome, fear of missing out, that you are missing out on few things as far as your PhD is concerned. These and you will see that other students are speeding up at work. Even though you are away, you will be called for progress seminars or for some kind of presentation to give as far as your research work is concerned. With respect to full-time PhD, mental health issues are different, like frustration. You may not find resources. A full-time PhD may be slow, but not because of lack of enthusiasm from the candidates, because of resource unavailability. Sometimes the supervisors are not available for discussion. They may be abroad. So these kinds of issues are there. Somebody is mid-career professional, if they are already working, if they are well settled, then if they are enrolling for a full-time PhD, then they may find it difficult to fit into the PhD setting. Is a part-time PhD valid for job? Yes. Part-time as well as full-time PhD is valid. Do you get a fellowship for part-time? For full-time, usually you have several fellowships. For part-time, usually I have not seen anyone getting a fellowship. Usually part-time has less of positions. The number of vacancies for part-time is usually less. Usually supervisors prefer a full-time candidate because they can get several of their other work also done, not just their own PhDs, which is not possible with a part-time candidate. Usually a person who has enrolled for full-time has a lot of time to finish their PhD thesis. They have time to think, to ponder, to come with conclusions, to get themselves acquainted with thesis and everything. But part-time usually have they have less time because of work priorities. Supervisor interaction is less in case of a part-time candidate. This is linked to the previous point. They have more time, so the supervisor interaction could be more. Finances are good in case of a part-time candidate. Whereas if you see the full-time candidates, the fellowship also usually is not sufficient. The flexibility in a full-time candidate could be less, because though experts say that the PhD is flexible, you can come anytime, mostly I have seen supervisors who insist that their students are there in the lab from a certain time to certain time. Not all, but some of them. This is there. For part-time, there is no such questions, because it's already established that they have less time, and that is why they have enrolled for a part-time. Full-time PhD is well suited for almost all of the disciplines. A part-time PhD may not be available for some of the disciplines. Before taking admission and before deciding whether you want to go for part-time or full-time, check if the positions are available. Check if your subject is available for a part-time vacancy. Now, since a person is there in the campus, or the interaction between others, it is more, then the opportunities and exposures related to your research, that is more in case of a full-time. Even if part-time PhDs give a presentation every few months, sometimes what happens is there are people visiting the labs, there are resource people, there are workshop seminars which keep happening every now and then. Not all the time part-time students are in the position to take part. And one last thing that I wish to address is the societal myths that a full-time PhD is better than the part-time PhD. Just because a part-time PhD is part-time does not mean it is inferior, and vice versa. So it depends on what are your priorities. Now, when I was working in a temporary position. In the meantime, I cleared NET, so I decided to go for full-time PhD. But if I had to have a regular job, full-time job, then my preference would have been a part-time one. You will have to decide based on your scenario, and you will have to decide based on your financial position as well. These are some of the points that I have come across, and I have tried my best to segregate both and come up with something useful. I have seen some students enrolling for full-time. On paper it is full-time PhD, but then the work happens part-time. That also I have seen in some other universities. If you think of 10 years down the lane, okay, because of competition or anything, if you are at the beginning of your career, starting out, then a full-time PhD may have a little bit more weightage as compared to part-time. It is seen that some of the universities or institute award part-time thesis without properly evaluating. So these are some of the loopholes of the system. If two freshers who land out at the same job portfolio have same salary, but the likelihood of a person getting promotion with a full-time degree is more than the person with a part-time. But this is totally circumstantial, and these are some of the things that I wanted to bring to your notice. At the end of the day, you have to take the decision, taking into consideration your situation. That's it for today's video. See you in the next one.